Hello and welcome to my tier list of the second series of the Ninth Doctor adventures from Big Finish, for which I'm a big fan.
As you can see, I've got all of my Big Finish releases with loads of ranges such as the War Master, Paul McGann, Time War stuff, unit stuff that's just sort of down at the bottom of the screen there.
If you don't know, a tier list is a ranking by placing the subjects into categories. Speaking of, here are the ones we're using today.
Why don't you just die?
Which is from Dalek.
Run for your life!
Just shut up a minute.
Rose, I'm trying to resonate concrete.
Which basically just means it's a bit dull or just wasn't for me.
Your wish is my command, but be careful what you wish for.
It was kind of there, but there was a nag somewhere that I just didn't like about it, which did not make it the final category.
That's not just amazing, it's fantastic!
Our first story is called The Blooming Menace, and I actually quite enjoy it. There's a really good sense of humour to this story. The episode is about a new species of plant that has encapsulated the hearts of all the men in London, apart from our main character, played by Dave Hearn, and of course the Doctor. The episode itself is a very interesting premise, and it doesn't take itself too seriously, which for me made a really interesting and fun listen while I was on the train one day. But in terms of memorability, I cannot tell you what happens at the end of the episode, and I would not say, when I listened to it a second time, that I thought it was any better, if not the same level as it was the first. So it's going to be stuck on this level. Our next story is called The Seas of Titan. It's mostly because I was slightly disappointed in this story. When I knew that the Doctor, the Ninth Doctor, was going to go up against the Sea Devils, I was hoping for a really cool sort of stomping adventure with them. I thought that the idea of the sort of morality of it all with the Ninth Doctor would work really well because we're just after the Time War. And I thought you could tell a really interesting story because the Sea Devils are fairly underused. So I was quite disappointed with this quite run-of-the-mill, quite simple Sea Devil story, this sort of beast under siege. I have to admit though, when I listened to it a second time and saw what it was really about, I did enjoy the story. But then again, I'm still slightly disappointed that they could have done more. It feels like a footnote when it should have been this sort of highlight of the series. And the final episode for this section is a story called The Colour of Terror. I did really enjoy this story. I think there's a good heart to it. There's some interesting characters. It's fairly contained. And the idea of the colour spectrum sort of being against you and things like that works really well. But it's here because I don't really remember a thing about it. When I look at the series and I was debating which episodes to put into which category, I went, do you know what, that episode was good and I enjoyed it. There's an interesting concept there, but there's way better in the next category and way better concepts and way better sort of stylization than this one. So it was a little bit more of the sort of run-of-the-mill episode, hence why it's here. And now we're going into my next category, which is my favourite Ninth Doctor line, Rose, I'm trying to resonate concrete. We're starting off with a story called The Last of the Zethazine. What the hell was that? Which I definitely haven't pronounced correctly, but it's a very cool space episode, as I would categorise it. It has alien thugs, alien gambling, an alien spaceport, a creature called the Zethazine, obviously, which is the last of its kind, and sort of rescue mission to save it. A pretty cool concept, a fun episode with some interesting ideas and sort of kept me entertained. And a lot of episodes where you can really stretch your imagination to what things look like and sort of build that world for yourself, which I do enjoy. Then again, it wasn't the most groundbreaking or most interesting story. The thing that separates this category and the previous category is that those are episodes that sort of disappointed me in a slight of way, like slightly. This one didn't disappoint me, but didn't make me excited to listen to it again. I will probably only listen to it again if I'm going through a box set. For that reason, it stays here. My thoughts are very similar on the next story, which is called The False Dmitri. It's quite a cool story about replicating the Russian king or the Russian Tsar. And it's a sort of historical story with robots thrown in. Works quite well, fun idea, and I enjoyed the story, sure. But then again, I wasn't particularly enthralled to watch it again, or listen to it again rather. So that's why it just has to stay in this category and it can't move beyond anything other. I might find that in a year or two, or next time I go to revisit them, I find, oh yeah, actually, that story's way better than I thought it was. I've got a new favourite episode in the box set, perhaps. And so we're on to, it was almost perfect. And the first story is called Salvation 9. It's about Sontarans who are female. And what I liked about this story is that it really took the time with these Sontarans, made them have full-blown characters and comedy moments and made quite a fun script out of it, which I really enjoyed. And the story and the sort of premise of like what these female Sontarans are like, and it's basically a story trying to get them sort of ownership of their own species. I felt, if I had to be harsh, that the story works quite well for the first half when you're introduced to the Sontarans and various other things like that. But when you sort of get into the plot of what the actual story is about, it's as simple as they're trying to register them as a species. It wasn't the most interesting thing to listen to, especially when I listened to it multiple times. Our next story is from the box set Hidden Depths, and this is an episode called Flat Pack. This episode contains Liv and Tanya, who are from the Stranded box set. It's about a year after I think the events of Stranded. They're going into a massive furniture store, and the episode is about the psychology behind the idea that stores are supposed to keep you in the shop for as long as they possibly can. So it's the idea that, you know, sweets go by the tills because the kids always nag for sweets when they're tired and they want to leave, so that they sort of, parents give in and give them sweets. It's that kind of idea. Things like the best value sort of items are at the front so that you always move towards them. It's various things along that idea, and it's quite interesting. And then they blow it out of proportion into this sort of very Doctor Who sense, where people are staying in this flat pack world, this store, for years above their life. There are creepy people walking around in masks, and I loved the story's premise, that the twist I enjoyed. You may see it coming. I found this story really, really fun. I just wish that it used Helen and Tanya a little bit more. I feel like the idea of seeing a different regeneration of the Doctor, a regeneration that's so different to the last one, would have a little bit more consequences for her. And it's sort of there, but again, they don't really do much with it because they want to have this cool adventure in Flat Pack. Our next story is called Lay Down Your Arms. It's an episode about peaceful resolution rather than just full-blown violence. An episode that is quite resonant for the Ninth Doctor. The episode is also a historical because it stars Brenda von Stuttner, or Brenda Kinsky, or Ginsky, who is the first woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize and is a famous pacifist and activist that I didn't know about before this episode. And then we're on to the final stack, and it says a lot when the most episodes that you have in one category is also the highest category, or maybe I'm just really indecisive. So our first story is called Red Darkness, which is ironically the last set of the series. It stars Adam Martin, who is an amazing YouTuber, but he also plays this cool role against the Rashta Narada. He also has his dog Doyle. The dynamic between the three of them is absolutely brilliant, and does carry on into the third series. Again, a really fun action adventure, an interesting twist on the Rashta Narada, and I think it worked really, really well. Our next episode is the finale to the first box set, which was called Station to Station. It's probably not on anybody else's top tier category, but it is for me because I really fell in love with this episode. I loved the writing, I loved the story. It's about Indigo Griffiths, who is playing a character called Saffron, as she goes home to her family that don't really approve of her life choices. And she learns a lot about herself on this journey, and she in fact goes on a journey of her own when she's greeted with a creature called the Griminy Gru, which can only speak in rhyme and is from like a folklore. He is a very cool character, especially on a writing perspective, because it means that he must rhyme, but in order to communicate to him, the Doctor must also rhyme also. And I think that didn't make sense as a sentence, ironically. I really enjoyed listening to the story because it had this gorgeous rhythm to it, but also had a very cool, triumphant conclusion. Our next story is Break the Ice. It's a Christmas special, I suppose, and it's about Jack Frost. Again, we're back with the sort of folklore, myths and legends kind of idea. Jack Frost as a character is absolutely brilliant. Played by Pip Torrens, and he does such a devilish, menacing character. The sort of companion for this episode is absolutely brilliant as well. It's about a space station where ice has taken over. It's a sort of base under siege story. And I really enjoyed the characters once again, but it also had a very triumphant conclusion. For me, when I listened to this episode, I used to work at a pub before I changed jobs. When this story came out, blimey, that was, last August, and with that I was walking home at about 10 o'clock at night after working all day, and sort of listening to this story, sort of walking to and from work after breaks, etc. And because I had about 10 to 15 minutes left at the episode, I was so enthralled by it that I decided to sort of walk the long way home after working all day, because I wanted to finish the story. And it wasn't just even like I took a slightly longer route. I purposely walked home and then went past home and walked back home in order to listen to it. A very, very good story, and probably my favourite of the set. Oh no, because there's still one episode left, and that is called Auld Lang Syne. It's a story about New Year's Eve across a decade. I think it's across the 90s. And this is a story that I do absolutely love. I think the way that it tells its story across these decades, and being New Year's Eve of each of those years, and you watch sort of as the characters have developed over that year and how their lives have changed. So that works very, very well, and has made a really interesting episode. And then it has a conclusion that I did not expect at all. So I really did enjoy this story. It's probably my favourite of the lot, although it's very, very close competition. I mean, the top category is definitely ones that I'm going to revisit many times. And so that's all of the 12 episodes ranked. I hope you did enjoy this video. It's been very good to revisit this series because it has been a very, very good series, and I feel like, as Christopher Eccleston is saying, that they're a well-oiled machine now with making the series. And it is a shame though that with this series they've stopped production of the vinyls for the range, which means that the third series, which is now out and has now begun, won't be having these gorgeous releases and the artwork shown off like this, which is such a shame, but there's nothing you can do about it. I suppose they weren't making enough money or something like that. They did seem like they were being a bit costly with several misprints, etc. So I understand why they have to do it on a business perspective, but it is going to be annoying that my collection, I guess, of Ninth Doctor audios only has 2 series on vinyl and then the rest are on CD. It's a bit of a shame. I'll tell you one thing though, my bank balance is a lot happier. There's a whole bunch of ranges I love to talk about in this format. For example, I finished Dark Eyes a couple of months ago. There's the Doctor Who Dalek Universe stuff, which I think is probably my favourite output from Big Finish over the last couple of years. But I've also been listening to the War Master stuff, which is a huge saga of, I think, about 9 series now. And I've only listened to 1 and 2 recently, and I thought they were absolutely brilliant. Derek Jacobi as the Master is phenomenal. So there's a lot that I like to listen to, and my new job allows me to sort of work, garden away while listening to Big Finish, and it's absolutely brilliant. I'm getting through like 2 box sets every week or something like that. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure you give it a like, subscribe. If you're new, do tell me what series you'd like me to do a ranking / review of in the future. That'd be hugely helpful. But until next time, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you soon. Goodbye.